Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about a prison break story from Japan. Before we start, we have to mention that the story took place during the Meiji era, which was between 1868 and 1912. During that time, prisons were very harsh and prisoners were suffering from daily torture. The hero of our story is Yoshi Shiratori. He was born in 1907 in Aomori, Japan. No other man in history has shown such hate for imprisonment more than Yoshi Shiratori. He became known as the most famous escapee in Japan of all times and was tagged as the man that no prison could hold. Yoshi had successfully escaped the Japan prison system 4 times. During his young age, Yoshi's family was poor and he had to work several jobs, mainly a tofu shop and fishing. Since life was very difficult at that time and he had more responsibilities, he started looking for other means of getting money fast. He became part of a gang famous for gambling and stealing. During one of his robberies, he got arrested and accused of murder and robbery. He tried to convince the judge that he didn't commit any murder, but he was sentenced 3 years in Aomori prison. In Aomori prison, the guards used to torture the prisoners on a daily basis, and that was the reason why Yoshi wanted to escape. As per the movie Escape Plan, there are 3 factors for a successful escape. 1. Know the layout. 2. Know the routine. And lastly, find tools that will help you with the escape. Yoshi knew that if he wants to escape, he has to be very patient, and that was easy since he was a fisherman. Every day, he would watch the guards and try to understand their routine. He also offered to help in the kitchen and the laundry to try and understand the prison layout. And since they always take a bath once a week, he already had the tools that he needed, which were a short wire and the wood which he took from his wooden bathing bucket. On the day of the breakout, Yoshi was ready at 5 a.m. and he knew he will only have 15 minutes to reach outside prison walls from his cell since the guards are changing shifts at that time. He knew that it wouldn't be easy, but what helped him was the fact that almost all prison door locks were the same. Since he was a robber, opening locks was a piece of cake for him, and he reached outside within less than 15 minutes. Yoshi was very smart as well, and he understands that if the guards found out that he is not in his cell after 15 minutes, they will start a large search and will eventually find him. That is why he put the wood from the bucket under his blanket, so that if they passed beside his cell, they would think he was still sleeping. His escape was successful, and he managed to get away from the prison. After 3 days, Yoshi got injured and had to go to a hospital, and he tried to rob some medicine. He was found stealing and the police were called and recaptured him. He was eventually transferred to Akita prison in 1942. In Akita prison, he was put in a solitary cell 3 meters high and had a small window at the top. Since the guards know that he escaped the prison before, they torture him even more during the day. And they kept his handcuffs on all the time even if he's in solitary cell. The guard chief is the only person that was kind to him and was bringing him food to the cell. Everyone thought that Yoshi could never break out from Akita, but Yoshi proved them wrong. Every night, Yoshi would remove his handcuffs, climb the walls of his cell like a lizard and reach the window. He would loosen the metal attached to the wood cover and go down and put the handcuffs again. His plan was done and he just needed the best time to break out, since even after going out of the window, the guards would still see him in the prison yard. He waited until the day the weather was very bad and rainy. He knew the guards won't be able to see him and he escaped through the window at night. After escaping Akita prison, he was captured after going to guard Kobayashi's house to ask for help in a case against injustice in the Japanese prison system, as he was one of the only people who had shown kindness and respect to Yoshi during his stay in Akita prison. However, while Yoshi was in the bathroom, the guard called out for the police and Yoshi was promptly arrested and put back in prison, and he vowed to never place his trust in another police officer ever again. Yoshi was transferred for the 2nd time to Abashiri prison, which was located in a remote locale in northern Hokkaido. Abashiri was no regular penal colony. It was reserved for the worst kinds of criminals in Japan. Yoshi was transferred here because he had already escaped 2 times and the police wanted him to stay put. As luck would have it for Yoshi, he managed to eventually escape Abashiri. The Abashiri Prison Museum even has a figure dedicated to Yoshi as he escaped his cell wearing nothing but his underwear. How did Yoshi do it this time? The man had an endless pool of ingenuity. To be honest, each morning he would spit miso soup on the door frame of his cell. The salts and moisture eventually corroded and weakened the door frame. Yoshi dislocated his shoulders and squeezed himself out of a small space on the metal frame where the guards would slide in his foot. Once again, Yoshi's escape was publicized and made the headlines of several newspapers in Hokkaido Shimbun. Yoshi was once again tried for escaping, and he was sentenced to death by the Sapporo District Court. Additionally, Yoshi was assigned 6 armed guards, and he was under surveillance 24 hours per day. At the Sapporo prison, he was put in a specially made cell that was designed to prevent him from escaping through any window in the ceiling. This would be the largest defect in the setup because too much attention to the ceiling meant the floor of the cell was more or less ignored. The prison guards at Sapporo had so much faith in the newly renovated cell that they no longer bothered to handcuff their prisoner. This would be mistake number 2. While it was true that Yoshi had aged and was fatigued from being a prisoner and from constantly escaping, there was one thing that still fueled his drive: desperation. While awaiting execution in 1947, Yoshi made his final bid for freedom by unlocking the bolts that held together with the cell's wooden floorboards. He used the bowl used for food to dig his way out of prison. Every day he would go down and dig, and no guard was able to see that coming. After 1 year of liberty, it was said that Yoshi was offered a cigarette by a police officer. And cigarettes were expensive after the war. Moved by the kindness of the police officer, Yoshi admitted that he was an escaped convict and offered to be turned in by the officer. He was tried once again by the High Court of Sapporo. They noted that in all his 4 escapes, he did not perform bodily harm to any of the guards, despite the fact that abuse by guards was rampant in all the prisons. The High Court of Sapporo decided to revoke the previous decision of the death penalty. Instead, he was given a final sentence of 20 years in prison. Yoshi requested that he be imprisoned in Tokyo, which the court granted. He spent his days in Fuchu prison until 1961, when he was given parole. He traveled to Aomori Prefecture more than a decade later to reunite with his daughter so that he could tell her his life story. Yoshi lived for another decade after that, doing odd jobs to survive. He eventually succumbed to a heart attack in 1979.